welcome everyone to our last LCAAC meeting of the year. I don't believe we have a quorum yet, but I think as Ms. Salinas just said, let's start with public comment. If you would raise your hand if you're interested in making a public comment.
Ms. Gardner, are you here for a public comment? Well, what I'll do is I'll keep a lookout for public comment, and why don't we go ahead and proceed with the agenda?
All right. Mr. Secretary, could you take the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephen Musto.
Present.
Ann Damron.
Present.
Vicky Chon.
Present.
Zayan Khan. Mr. Khan. Well, I see him, but anyway, let's keep going. Amanda Dang.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin Ching. Yen Chen. Divya Rani Belamkonda. Annie He. Prakash Tasot.
Yeah, present.
Anna Shipper.
Present.
Abhay Kulkarni. Aparna Balamaran. Siddhartha Banerjee.
Present.
Larona Jones. Michael Gardner. Christy Rocha.
Here.
Leticia Salinas.
Here.
Nancy Pfeiffer. Trustee Diane Jones.
Here.
Thank you. And Trustee Vivek Prasad. Mr. Chair, I'm at 9. The only uncertainty I have is that I see someone by the name of Daisha Gardner, and we're expecting a member by the name of Michael Gardner. I don't know if there's any relation, but I'm currently at 9 out of 11.
Yes, so it looks like we are short of a quorum right now. Ms. Salinas and I did talk about this prior to the meeting and discussed this may be a possibility. We decided it would be best to continue with the meeting, not in official capacity unless we reach a quorum. If that's the case, then we will return to agenda item 4, which is to approve the minutes from the March 22nd meeting. All right. So with that in mind, we're going to move to the proposal for carryover fund. So Ms. Salinas is going to describe what's in this proposal that you see linked in the agenda. And I will also put a link to that proposal in the chat.
Thank you, Mr. Musto. This evening, we come forward as we're getting to the close of the year and reevaluating what some of our unfunded needs are as a district, and really hearing from our community, from our teachers, from a lot of folks. And essentially what we're looking forward is to an approval from tonight from all of you for an increased need in the area of technology devices. This is specifically the Chromebooks for students. And we are proposing to allocate $700,000 towards this purchase. We currently have a carryover that is close to about 1.6, possibly close to 2 million. And I'll share a little bit more about what we're planning with the rest, and to also share that with all of you. This would serve goal 1.3 in the implementation of the state of board adopted academic content and performance standards for students, and also goal 2.1 for the implementation of state board adopted academic content for students. And the funds would be used to support our students in the implementation of the new board adopted curriculum in the area of science, and also to use for progress monitoring of students through our assessments. We also recognize, and not for action tonight, but we also recognize that we are also very much aware that we have a lot of positions in the LCAP. And within the LCAP, we have the salaries of classified and certificated staff. And we are also in negotiations with our labor partners. So we want to make sure that we're allowing for some of that carryover to also help to support the increases that may be impending as we're working through that process with our labor partners. So we are leaving a little bit of that fund there to do that. And also reminding folks that any of the carryover, we would be sharing the accounting of this with our committee when we rejoin all of you back in the fall. So for tonight's purpose, for all of you to consider is the allocation of funds towards the purchase of Chromebooks for students.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Salinas? Ms. Chan?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is, what is our life expectancy of the Chromebooks? I don't know. I know there's a better word for it, but how long do we expect to use these Chromebooks for? I know that, you know, they are used quite often. And then, well, I'll ask my second question afterwards.
Yes, and my colleagues can also probably chime in, but my understanding is 3 to 5 years, and it really depends on the amount of use, but it's approximately 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And then,
oh no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, and then I was going to add, and then also what it's 3 to 5 years, and then we're not able to. So for example, as we do the CASP testing, the state testing, there's things that we have to do within that. And so Chromebooks have to be to a certain level, but then there is some use for Chromebooks for other things in the classroom. So we're able to use the Chromebooks that are not up to snuff to the best capacity. Teachers and students can still use them in the classroom for other uses, but not really to the degree of a lot of the apps that our teachers use, or testing either. Or
okay.
curriculum.
Okay, so then and so I assume that these Chromebooks then would be like class Chromebooks, class sets. Okay, and then my second, well, it's not a question, it's just something I kind of wanted to voice, is that when we get new technology or the technology needs updates, a lot of the time that setup then does fall on the educators, and sometimes we don't even realize that until the beginning of the year. So I just would like to make a request that those are set up before they are sent to the schools, or if they're sent to the schools in technology. I know we've had our tech person out there at our school like setting everything up, just so that then doesn't fall on the staff at the school. So, the beginning of the year is always crazy enough. So just if we can make sure that that is done beforehand, I think that would be really appreciated.
Yes, we can definitely look at that. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ms. Dameron?
Thank you. And to Victoria's point, I'm sure the classified staff in the tech department will help you with that. Just make sure to get those tech requests in.
They do, but there's not enough of them too. So,
well, that's a whole, that doesn't fall in LCAP, unfortunately. But moving on, my question is, Letty, you mentioned about potential moving forward changes in compensation, but recently there was a slight change in a benefit, a burden. How retroactive is that, and has that already been calculated into LCAP so that we're actually operating with the correct amount of carryover?
Yeah, so I can definitely follow up on that. I think yes, and I know what you're talking about.
Again, it was minuscule, but
yeah, it was very small, but yeah, I know that it is in our budget moving forward. That's already allocated, but I will want to look at what the impact is for some of these positions for the incoming year, especially for our pass-through funds for the site. So yeah, let me follow up with that, and Christy and I can.
We don't want to end up short June 30th.
Correct.
Because we didn't account for that.
Correct.
And then, because in a lot of the positions, you already have to look forward. If it's a classified position and not a year-round position, you're already looking forward, and you have to sort of mentally encumber the vacation payouts and things like that. So there are a lot of, things to juggle. So it's not always really clear cut. Just don't want to miss anything.
Thank you. That's a good point for noting that. Thank you.
And to that point, we do have a calculated for any vacation buyout. So those are already encumbered. So that we are prepared for.
Any other questions or thoughts on these? I'd just like to say one thing real quick is that, you know, we've been, those of us who are working in the district for a few years, you know, you've seen how Chromebooks have really, it's amazing how much things have changed due to access of Chromebooks, and that's a really good thing. But this cost is ongoing and significant, and it's usually it's district, but also it's oftentimes sites job to find that funding. So it's a real challenge, and if we want to maintain Chromebooks, it will require some refresh. Mr. Desat, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. So my question was really, are we going to allocate these Chromebooks only to the disadvantaged students? So because these funds are for those, or how are you going to?
Letty, have you talked with it? I can talk about other distribution plans in the past, but have you planned this out? Or?
Yes, so that'll be our next step. We certainly will, as you can imagine, we're doing a refresh, as you referred to, because we have to do that across the district. And so we will be able to address that. So yes, that's who we would prioritize, much like we do already with state and federal, but yes, we would do that.
Any other questions about this particular topic? Okay, so I don't believe there's anything we can vote on without a quorum. Is that correct, Ms. Salinas?
Yes, that's correct. So what I can do in my proposal is to send out an email to the committee, and I'll attach the proposal and maybe do a brief synopsis of this evening. And we can do that via email.
Thank you. Okay, with that, you're on mute. There you go.
I'm sorry, really quick. My question is more procedural. If this comes to the board and it hasn't had a vote because we haven't had quorum, what is the board still able to take action? Or does this committee have to actually make an official recommendation before the board can act?
That's a good question. I will send an email out tonight, and I'll just keep emailing people that have not voted. So I will try to get this, because I know there's going to be an urgency on getting this order if it's approved and recommended to the board. But the board would certainly have the final approval. So I don't think I'm going to get it in for the May 11th. So this will come for the June 15th board meeting. So it'll give me a little bit of a window to get it.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, I know with other committees, in some circumstances, like the vote has to be taken at the meeting when there is quorum, like doing a vote, like sending out a ballot after a meeting isn't actually an official vote. So I would just want to make sure that we're locked in with whatever our procedure needs to be. I would hate to have to call another meeting.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that how we're handling the vote is actually going to count.
Okay, would we have to explore that via our rules or our guidelines or anything, or are there district guidelines, or is there specific to our committee?
I'm guessing we probably need to check with the superintendent and see what kind of the voting rules for this committee are, because I know my understanding is technically this isn't required to be a Brown Act committee, but we've decided it's going to be a Brown Act committee. So if it's a Brown Act committee, then my assumption would be that only votes taken at the meeting with those present with quorum count. But I don't know that for sure. I would consult with the superintendent, who could check with council to make sure.
Yeah, I can check. I know that I was talking to my support person here, and she said in the past we had done a vote by email, but I will double check because quorum has come up before. And as a reminder, the LCAAC committee is a recommending body to the board. And so the board would ultimately be the deciding of entity, but I will definitely check. So I see some new, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lechner, go ahead.
Ms. Salinas, as one of the elected officers of this body, I was going to offer my help. If you needed to round up any of our members for an emergency meeting for this vote, I'd be happy to share your burden in making phone calls.
Thank you so much. Yes, I will double check after this and be in contact with you via email tomorrow. Thank you. So Mr. Musto, I think we may have some public comments. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you.
Yeah, so I see Ms. Pelletier and a number that starts with a 312. Are you, if you're here for a public comment, please feel to raise your hand and we'll take that now.
Actually, this is Prakash on 312. I had to take from the phone.
Thank you. Oh, we got a thing in the comment. No public comment, just wish to listen. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And thank you, and Ms. Pelletier. We have this live streaming on our website, and you're welcome to view it there. So we are live streaming.
All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the review of the draft LCAP. So you see the draft LCAP and all of its 115 pages. But I'm going to share with you the budget allocations so that we can at least look at that as we discuss this. Maybe Dr. Rocha, do you want to kind of give your overview of things, and I can add some details as well?
Sure. So basically, this is a draft budget of what we have allocated for each of the goals and actions. Just a kind of quick overview. Each of the goals will tell us at that bottom what the total allocation is for each goal. So we'll see a pretty significant amount in goal 3 to barriers of learning. And I believe, since it's still draft, what we have anticipated working with our business division is what we're projecting is about $16 million, but there are going to be some additional tweaks that we'll need to make to that. So about 16,437,859 is what we're anticipating. We'll have a better understanding of what our budget will be for next year when the governor does his May revise. At the May revise, which will be happening very soon, we'll get some insights about if there's any additional funding for local control funding formula, in particular around supplemental funds that Fremont receives. So that is subject to change once we get more information from the governor's office as far as what are the priorities and what will be in the budget for next year in regards to education. So there will be some more tweaks to that because we will need to be adding step in column for any positions that there is staffing associated with that. As an employee who continues to work with the district, there's different salary scales for the different groups. And so we tend to budget about 2 to 3% for that. So that will be some minor tweaks that I will be working on. But this is what we have as of right now of our draft budget for the 22-23 school year based on all of the feedback we've received from our community partners.
Thank you. Let me go to just give you a brief overview of what this process looks like on our end. Is that, obviously we're presenting a draft today. Tomorrow, actually it happens to be tomorrow, the ACOE, who is our approving body, will begin to start looking at our draft. So they're going to go through it to make sure that we are addressing all the parts of the LCAP that need to be addressed and make sure the money is where it is appropriately documented in each part. So that takes several meetings to go through that with them. We eventually come up with a draft that takes into account any edits that are suggested by ACOE, Dr. Rocha referred to possible budget changes from the May revise. So those are changes that happen. And eventually we get to what is, I believe is June 15th, which will be our public hearing, which is at the board meeting. It's one of the board item agendas. And it's at that point the trustees and the community can give us suggestions. So while we've given you a 115-page draft to look at, it's not reasonable to read that in an afternoon. But over the next, actually more than a month, you'll have an opportunity to look through that to see if there's any questions, and suggestions can be presented at the public hearing at that board meeting. After that public hearing, we make some additional edits based off the comments we received and guidance from the trustees. And then we bring it to the next board meeting, which is the very end of June, I think the 29th, for hopefully final approval. After that point, we've met the deadline by July 1st, and it goes to ACOE for the final approval. So with that all in mind, we have shown this kind of budget breakdown previously, so we have looked at it a little bit, but you may not have, obviously, if you don't work in the district, you might not have context for some of these things. So we're happy to answer what questions you have and to go into further details about some of these line items.
Mr. Musto, can I add one thing?
Please.
So one thing to just for our group to kind of the gist of the whole LCAP and supplemental funds is that in the overall document, there are sections where we are to call out our successes and areas of growth. And so based on what our data shows us is where really these goals and actions should be rooted. So sometimes we do get suggestions from community partners, but if we don't have the data that supports that's the need, then that might be something that we note as feedback, but really it's a combination of looking at what does our data tell us, and how do we address the needs of our unduplicated students and our students groups so that we are principally supporting and utilizing the fundings for our unduplicated students to make accelerate learning, address social emotional needs, and any other type of behavioral support. So I just wanted to reference that because sometimes there are suggestions, but if we don't have the data to support that, that would be something the county would then flag and say, why are you using funding when the data says that this is the greatest need? So we just wanted to add that piece.
With that in mind, I'll open it up if there are any questions or thoughts, explanations needed. It's usually a pretty talkative group, so I'm surprised I can't get
And Mr. Musto, I think what I can also share is, I mean, what I appreciate is as we've been moving through the process, we've had a lot of great input tied to the data and the survey data, and certainly our achievement data. And a lot of the highlights really point to what we heard from all of you and a lot of the parent community as counselors. We're continuing with that commitment to counseling for social emotional support. I think one of the new things that we're going to look at in this LCAP is an additional work around MFTs, and that's direct counselors who are associates who will be working at the school sites out of student support services. So folks that can actually do individual or group counseling. So that'll be an addition to the academic counselors and our elementary counselors. And then also we heard about targeting ELD, and so we are going to have an increase in ELD certificated teachers to support students with direct services. The libraries, continuing to add to our libraries at the school sites to support students. And so we see a lot of the same work that's really moving our kids forward. Another highlight, if you look at 1.5 on this document, which I'm really excited about, is not in addition to support for English learners and English language development standards, but we're going to look at partnering with the Silicon Valley Math Initiative to support not just English learners, but in the area of math. And so kind of like that double dose where we know math is an area of improvement for our district. So that's another highlight that we look forward to continuing to support and bring that new learning for our teachers next year. So I invite you all to take a look at this very, very draft that we have, but please know that it's going to change a bit. We will hear from the Alameda County Office of Education after they take a few days to read the rest of this week. And then we have our meeting with them next Wednesday. And then certainly we will attach the updated draft for the public hearing the Friday before our, so is that June 10th, Mr. Musto, did we say? I think it's June 10th, right?
Oh yeah, the Friday before, yes.
Yeah, so we'll post the public agenda on June 10th, Friday, and it'll have the draft. And then the public hearing will be on June 15th, and then the final at the end of the month.
Ms. Shipper, thank you.
Okay, earlier we had a proposal for 700,000 for more Chromebooks. And looking at 1.7, is the 700,000 on top of the 500,000 or in lieu of the 500,000?
That is on top of it. So what we're proposing the 700,000 just for the carryover for this year, and this will be for next year.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, Mr. Musto, I would propose that we move to the next item, knowing that we're going to have some more time to take a look at this and really start to just thank all of you for all the time. You guys are the core group that kept coming every time, and we really appreciate you. But we also know that we've got some folks who will be outgoing members. And then I want to have some discussion around the openings for next year and what our next steps will be for that. So I don't know, Mr. Musto, if you want to share your screen with the role, and that way we can take a look at that.
Will do.
Yes, so as you can see, we have vacancies, so we've got some work ahead of us, but I also know that we've got a lot of folks out there who are willing to come help and join our work for the next school year. But I do want to point out that the folks who have their term ending in 2022 school year, certainly our wonderful student board member, student trustee, and Surfboard E members, and also Mr. Ching, who is part of the DLAC rep. That is an annual appointment. So we will have new membership there, and the students will select their members, and then our DLAC will select their member. Next year, we will also look at, as you can see, for 2022, for the American area, we are going to need 2 new reps. I'm seeing for Kennedy as well. Ms. Anna Shepard, thank you so much for all of your work. And it's not to say you can't reapply, but please know that we're just kind of following the process that's here. And then I see down here, Ms. Larona Jones for the parent at large position. And I know Mr. Gardner was unable to make it this evening, but we will have an opening there as well. And then really that's it. So what we're going to propose to do is that we will start to publicize the recruitment again, as we have in the past for the openings, and then bring the names to the board for their review and selection at the fall meeting of the board in time for our first meeting in the fall. And as I said, you're welcome to reapply. Those of you, I have to say, Ms. Shipper, you have really just, thank you so much. I mean, I think if she was always one of the first ones on, she and I and a few others. So a huge thank you to you. I mean,
I've done this for, Ann Dameron, can you correct me if I'm wrong? I think I've done this for what, 7 years? And I've never missed a meeting.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And please don't be surprised if at the board meeting I do some shout outs. So we'll at the public hearing. So you may see some of that. But
and I think it's so important that those of us who are current members help to recruit parents as well as just postings or, robocalls or whatever, because it to get up to speed to understand how this works, it takes some
Takes a while.
boot camp, as it were. And so it's easy to lose people because we're not, explaining exactly how the plan works. So, to Anna's point, she's been on the committee, but it takes 2 or 3 years to really understand what's going on. So making sure in the first few meetings in the fall that we're really meeting the needs of the committee members before we get to this point in the year where decisions have to be made. I think it's really important. And thank you, Anna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. You might be the most experienced LCAAC member in the state. I mean, it hasn't been going much longer than 7 years, so it's very good.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our board president, Ms. Jones, she does double duty. She and Mr. Prasad, they get to see this twice, maybe 3 times, because then they will also see it as a board member. So thank you for your time. We know it's a lot. Okay, so with that said, thank you to all of you. Thank you to our students. Again, I know also some of you may be doing AP studying at the same time. So I know AP tested started this week. So thank you for your time. And then also certainly, Christy, if you can share with the DLAC, to thank them for always having a rep that comes every year. Okay, so yeah, so that's what I have for that part. I don't know, Steve, if you have any other words.
I just thank you very much for the membership, for the participation of our members. It's a really great group, and I've really enjoyed meeting with you this year, and I'm looking forward to next year as well. And I know some of you will be back, and I hope some of you will be able to return as well.
So what I'll do is I'm going to do some research on the vote. And so please expect an update from me to all of you. If by chance we do have to do a quick emergency meeting, I will work with Mr. Lechner to try to see how many folks we can get for that item. But otherwise, please look through your emails and we will be sure to update you on the next steps.
Yeah, and I would also say, I know we talked about the public comments and things, but we're certainly available to take emails if you have questions about the LCAP as you review it as well. All right, I think with that, unfortunately, we won't have a official quorum, but we will, I think we'll be able to end the meeting now. Is that correct? Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Zamora.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, Zion. Bye-bye.